Hey, what's going on, William?
Not much, Vic. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing well. How things been going? You been doing any wargaming lately?
I wargame every day, Vic. I'm an addict.
I know that's kind of a rhetorical question. I already knew the answer to it, but yeah. So that's great. What are you diving into these days?
I'm doing a non-historical scenario based around the Maryland campaign during the American Civil War. I'm playing actually a mirror match. I'm doing both one game as North, one game as South against the same opponent, so we can compare and contrast each other's strategies.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. So would you say that like your consumption deals mainly with like tabletop? Are you card? Are you digital?
Primarily digital.
Okay.
Actually, I'm a huge fan of War Game Design Studio and their variety of war games covering anywhere from, the ages of musket and pike, medieval era, to even contemporary up to modern day.
And they've got a pretty large catalog of stuff to choose from.
Pretty
right?
large. Actually, they do have some on, the Global War on Terror. I haven't looked to see if, I can find any of your units. If there's a Vic Rubel character out there.
Yeah, dude, if you had a Vic Rubel in Abu Hyatt, the main thing you'd probably have to deal with is the time spent in the smoke pit, sleeping, and then cursing as I was falling down wadis would be your big dilemma.
I don't even need to buy the game to do that. I can just do that on a daily basis. Well, anyways, so yeah, definitely recommend War Game Design Studio. In fact, on the Marine Corps Association website, if you go to our professional development page, you see decision making games and exercises. We actually have a discount section.
Oh, yeah. Is there a code that comes with that?
Yeah, it's MCA 25, capital M, capital C, capital A, 25, just the numerics, and you can go and get 25% off of any order for any amount of games you want. So if you buy, all 100 plus games, it's 25% off.
Buy one, 25% off.
Precisely.
Awesome. And then, so if I went to War Game Design Studios and I put in that discount code of MCA25, I'm in.
You're in, buddy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and you or anyone listening to this could put that code in, and then maybe if you're unfortunate enough, you'll actually face me on the battlefield. And
that would be unfortunate, especially for me. But especially as we are looking at we've had episodes where we've talked about on the show where we've talked about potential wars across the globe, and then limited training, and you never know when this stuff's going to go down. This is a great way to get your reps and sets in, right?
Exactly. You do this just to, on the side. It doesn't even need to take long to do a turn. It can be a tournament anywhere from 2 to 5, 10, 15, even up to 30 minutes. So really as much time as you really need to dedicate toward it. And it just be a quick mental game for you to figure out how to solve a particular problem. Even if you're getting your butt handed to you, it's okay,
yeah,
shoot, I'm losing. How can I dig myself out of this hole is sometimes a question that many people might need to ask themselves.
And if you need to break from, you don't want to go cold turkey from your computer, but you feel like you need a break, this is a great way to get off of TikTok and social media and just focus and actually develop your brain rather than rotting it.
Exactly, precisely. So definitely go ahead on our website, check out the Marine Corps Association professional development page, get that code MCA25, and go ahead and get your reps and sets in on the wargaming.
All right, let's do it. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Welcome to episode 223. We hope you're having a wonderful holiday season and pray that you'll be safe as we enter into the new year. This week, we welcome the founder and executive director of History Flight and Honorary Marine, Mark Noah, to the show. This is our last episode of 2025. We're ending the year on a high note with Mark Noah. Mark talks to us about how he came to start History Flight, its mission's impact not only on the force but on American society, and his feelings on becoming an honorary Marine. Also, we at the MCA know how stressful and challenging the holiday season can be. Mental health challenges and suicide continue to take far too many of our active duty service members and veterans. We want you to know that you are not alone. If you need help, please ask for it. And if you think of someone you haven't heard from in a while, please reach out to them. You can't dismiss the power of contacting someone, even in a text, asking how they're doing. Do your comm checks, and if you need help, please reach out. We all want to see you in 2026 and beyond. Semper Fidelis. This is episode 223. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Thank you for joining us and your continued support. I'm Vic. I'm here with Nancy.
Hey, Vic.
And I'm actually not Nancy, the quintessential Chuck Norris missing in action.
Yeah.
M60 on the hip, just firing it. So speaking of firing away, so you just came off vacation. You had a holiday.
I did.
and just jumped right from the frying pan into the fryer.
I
sort of
did.
thing?
It was a deadline for a Leatherneck, and what are you going to do?
Shenanigans ensued.
Shenanigans ensued, but
Did how was your vacay? Was it?
the holiday
couple
was
days?
good. It's a 2-day holiday. For those of you who don't know, it's Rosh Hashanah. It's Jewish New Year. It's a time to celebrate, and
Kids come in or just Sam?
no, the kids did not come in.
Okay.
That's a
No,
little
my
sore
bad.
spot. Let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
The kids did not come
That
in.
didn't make the don't talk about list, so I'm off the
Okay. It was fine. We were with friends and
Good.
a lot of good food. I'm kind of still in a brisket coma.
Okay.
Nice.
So-
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I make good brisket.
The infamous
So do I.
friend, Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, the infamous Friends scene where Joey walks in with his meat pants, I think it was, for Thanksgiving.
I was more thinking like the Mrs. Maisel make a brisket. Who knows the reference here? The
No.
marvelous
Marvelous
Mrs.
Mrs.
Maisel.
Maisel.
And whenever she wants to score some points with somebody, she makes a brisket.
Yeah.
I relate to that on such a deep level. You have no idea.
Yeah, I've been a vegetarian now for
Oh, sorry.
Like 3 days.
6 years.
Vic.
Yeah, I did it for Lent
okay.
back in, I think, 2019, and I just
It just
kept
took.
going, yeah.
Wow.
I was always wondering
But
why you
man,
were
I-
withering away every time I see
I
just a
thought
little
it was
bit
my
less.
youthful glow.
Just a little bit less. Yep.
I'm sad now. I
Oh,
thought
wow.
I thought
I
it gave,
think you really hurt his
I thought it
feelings.
gave me
I
a
don't know.
vibrance.
I mean,
thought it gave me a vibrance.
I saw your bowl.
I
of
mean, those.
trust
fuck,
me, I
eating
saw
all
your
that
bowl
damn
of eucalyptus
crud.
back there on your desk, brother.
Yeah, it was eucalyptus. That's right. It comes in little 10-ounce bags.
Oh
of
man,
eucalyptus.
this has gone off the rails
that's
so
Already.
fast.
Speaking of which, you gotta
That's what
stop.
happens when you get Amtrackers in a room.
Yeah, I gotta stop at the dispensary on my way home. I'm kidding. I don't. And I'm not that kind of vegetarian, or am I? But so, well, welcome back. By the way,
Thank you.
And I guess you're through the
The
initial.
next one is the fast day, Yom Kippur. That's next week. I'll be
Yeah.
out and I'll be fasting. So
fast. Oh, I thought you meant fast, like it comes fast.
No,
You'll
it's
be fasting.
a day of fasting, and no brisket. It's a day of no brisket
Right.
or anything else. So I'll be cranky.
Okay.
Can you
'Cause it-
smell brisket? Can you put it in some diffusers throughout the
You
house?
could.
or-
It's really, you know what I
That
can
would
do
be
without the food? It's the
torture.
coffee. It's not having coffee in the morning that really gets
Oh,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm addicted,
Yeah.
but it'll be fine.
Is it sun up to sundown or 24 hour?
25 hours.
25.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
I got this.
Yeah, you do got this.
I got this.
Yeah. Well, we are really excited to be welcoming two fantastic guests. One who y'all know very well, Sergeant Major Justin LeHue.
Hello.
Thank you for coming
Absolutely,
back.
The
absolutely.
OG Scuttlebutt guest
Yeah,
back
the
in the
OG,
house.
original.
Back in the house.
The original, yeah. And he's not, at least he walked here, but he's not walking for anything
Right, not
as
right
of
now.
yet. Not right now. Sure on the horizon. But we also have Honorary Marine and founder of History Flight, Mark Noah, here with us. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this
Thanks
is
for
really
being here, Mark.
So cool. I want to dive into your story and your journey and how the genesis behind History Flight and all that stuff. But the first thing I want to do is talk to you about being an honorary Marine, which I think is so fascinating. One, there's only, I think, a dozen living honorary Marines. Is that right? Or
I'm not sure. I
it's
think
a very small number because we.
I think there's 94 total or something, or
Yeah.
under 100.
Because there's the Frenchman, the who does the tours.
Gilles.
Gilles.
And I think it's Lojan. My French.
Langan.
Langan.
Gilles Langan
Yeah.
on the Bellawood
In
battlefield.
Bellawood.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
I met him
You
out
did.
there. Yeah, what a nice guy.
So yeah, we talked a little bit about that. He's also an honorary Marine. But yeah, so what was all that? I know it was 2015 that you were given this by was it General Lukeman?
It was
to you?
yes, General Lukeman did the presentation, and Justin LeHue was part of that.
Oh, because you were in
And-
training command then.
I was at TCOM.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the award, it was signed off by General Dunford.
Okay.
It was awarded that year.
So yeah, what is that like? I'm assuming you get more than just a T-shirt, right? So,
Well, I mean, it's a really
shitty haircut.
a really broad, honor that they entrusted me with, and I appreciate it. In 2003, we started the History Flight Project and had started researching the missing Marines on Tarawa, starting in about 2005, and then when we had done the recovery of a large number of the missing Marines on Tarawa, they started what some Tarawa veterans that I took back to Tarawa, they told me that, well, we started this grand conspiracy to make you an honorary Marine. And that's, it was a nice way of them saying, thanks a lot for what you did to help return the Marines from Tarawa. And so it's a humble honor for me, really. I mean, I'm just a simple guy, but it was a neat project, well worth the endeavor, and I think we've recovered well over 150 Marines from Tarawa so far, and we're seeking to try to continue that.
What a wonderful
Amazing.
way to honor not just the fallen, but those families that have just sort of been hanging in limbo. And we've talked to Sergeant Major about this and stuff. I mean, what a wonderful project, and I would definitely want to get into how it all started for you. But I guess just getting into, because I don't know if there are a lot of folks out there listening that know that like an honorary Marine title is like an official thing. It's not just hey, this is a cool guy that hangs out with a bunch of jarheads. Do you get a certificate?
Yeah, General Dunford signed a plaque that they gave me, and Justin Lee, who actually did the background check, like they told General Dunford asked Justin to review who I was to see if I was worthy of that, and Chuck Norris at the same time, and
Oh my God!
So ironically, I was not gonna. Hey, coincidentally, as we dropped that, I was going to save that as it went here. As that comes down,
all of the linkages. I mean, the Missing in Action series, History Flight.
It was one of the perks of being at Training and Education Command, because the neat connecting file to that was at the time that they started that in the Carolinas. Brigadier General Lukeman was the division commander of the 2nd Marine Division when the package was initiated by veterans and also like the 2nd Marine Division Association, Ray Brown, people from that area, right? It just so happened by the time that got through the wickets, Brigadier General Lukeman had become Major General Lukeman, who then took over Training and Education Command the year that this arrived at the Commandant of the Marine Corps, along with Chuck Norris's package. So there's going to be two. So it kind of comes down. So it kind of comes down to the Marine Corps or anybody who is just, hey, is this for real? Like, is this a joke? Is Chuck Norris, right? Because as you know, there's an officer that vets all dozers. There's a group of people that vets that, and that one probably wasn't given as much vetting. Because really at the time, Mark Noah was not a name that anybody had associated with the Marine Corps other than the people down there who had knowledge of his group out doing that.
Right.
And the amount of things. So when you got two packages and they're saying, here's the timeline for those Major X or whatever, try to find whatever you can do, because the last thing that the Marine Corps wants to do is award something and then, oops, we found out this other information.
Right.
So these are vetted really good to make sure there is no reason. Like, it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's not going to come back and bite anybody in the butt.
Right.
Runs that gambit.
Right.
That's that one. And then that's that one. And then all of a sudden, that was great. The award comes down, comes to our headquarters, and then we had the honor of putting together this ceremony, and that was the first time when him, his wife, and 2 kids came to Quantico. I was the sergeant major that put the ceremony together. General Lukeman was the awarding authority over in the museum in 2015, and it was that conversation that day that basically struck up the relationship that Mark and I have maintained even today as great friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about that. So how did History Flight come to be?
Well, my wife and I lived in Atlanta, and we ran 2 businesses while I worked full-time as an airline pilot. And it was a frenetic period of time, the 1990s. And toward the end of the 90s, I got so burned out on it, I said to my wife, we ought to consider moving and selling everything here. And she was initially opposed to it, but then eventually agreed, and that was a good move. So we moved down to Florida, and now I had all this extra time on my hands, and I promised myself I would never get as busy as I had been in the 90s. And
Famous last words.
And after about 2 years of not being busy, I started the History Flight Project and became busier than I had been in the 90s. And we started out with World War II airplanes that we restored, and we took them on air tours around the country selling rides, which was really awesome. But if we generated an operating profit, we would turn that profit into funding the research into the missing from World War II. And so it was a great kind of win-win for both situations. And eventually we came to realize that the people that operated the airplanes were more important than the airplanes themselves. And we switched from doing airplane rides, we shut all of that down and moved into doing just MIA recovery work. And, it's been a life-changing experience for me and for most of the good people that have worked with us. And it's been a very positive thing.
What was it about the MIA recovery that, like, you inherently linked it to this refurbishing of old vehicles? Like, what was it about that aspect that?
Well, we started out the organization just with refurbishing old airplanes, and then we came to realize the human side of the war was so completely unfinished. 19% of America's World War II casualties are still missing today. Little known fact.
That's a lot.
A huge number. It's 79,000 people. And some change.
Yeah.
And it's horrible to say and some change because that's people you're talking about. But that's the stark reality. And, I find myself looking at today's Washington where they're spending just obscene amounts of money on all sorts of different things. But they're hardly spending any money on this. They probably spend $250 or $300 million a year on this. And that's not a number that is adequate.
Error.
That is not a number adequate to address the scope of the problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we sought to do our part as big or as small as it would be possible to put a dent in that number. And so far, we've recovered over 400 individuals, which is, substantial. And we've recovered 165 Japanese and Korean individuals. So that's a very significant number. And if you look at the grand scope of this problem, it's all about numbers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just thinking about how we take that for granted. I mean, as Sergeant Major will attest to. I mean, as veterans of the modern era of warfare, we just sort of take for granted that even if someone is a KIA, they're coming back.
Right.
And so the idea that a family would not have closure for generations, it's hard to conceive of what.
Oh, it's amazing. We were talking about it yesterday, and leading up to this, there's a spiritual element to this kind of work. There's no question about that. And whether people want to acknowledge it or not, it doesn't really matter because it exists. But so many of the families that we talked about how my mom knew when her son had died. She felt it. And that's a reality. And you've seen it. We've read hundreds of letters from the families. You've seen them talk about it. We've read the letters from the mothers to the Department of Defense for decades. And they're beautifully written in cursive and very articulate, very well educated, and they're pleading with the government to help them. And then they're passing away before it ever happens.
Right.
But the story continues through the generations.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the things, as I've followed this story and kind of tracked you and what you're doing from afar for years now. I think that was the biggest surprise to me, is how impactful the work continues to be on today's generation. That this was such a huge hole in the family story, and being able to have Uncle so and so back here and buried honorably is huge.
It fills the void, or it completes the circle, however you want to look at it. But it completes the issue. It gives them a final resting place,
and it fulfills promises because of as the generations are passing away, the verbal stories start to get couched and they die. So then you're going to written archives or to letters or anything else to tell these stories. But the fluoride in that water, in all of these family circumstances, and usually you do find it, it's very rare that you find a family that this did not really impact in a certain way. And what it is you find out that even though mom's not here and dad's not here anymore, one of those kids promised mom and dad that they wouldn't stop looking. And now those kids are 80 and 90, and their kids there's still a void. There is still a memorial marker. And we explained that maybe a couple podcasts ago, was the difference that a lot of people in their towns that aren't even aware they have MIAs, because in a lot of ways they're confused even in a small American town, because Jimmy has a headstone out there. But when you read the headstone, you find out Jimmy's not there because it's only a memorial headstone.
Right.
And they have bought a headstone and put the battle or put something on there, and it says in memoriam underneath that. In memoriam means that somebody is still looking. They're still missing. And so to be in positions to watch families be able to trade out in memoriam headstones for authentic, actual government headstones after 80 some years to fulfill that promise. And that ties in so great with the promise, Vic, you and I wore a uniform. And I've told Mark and everybody all the time is, there was no doubt. My drill instructors told me we don't leave our dead and wounded behind. When I was a drill instructor, that's what I carried that on. And then you actually find out that that matters, and it's a force multiplier in why it's so impassioned for the active force that still needs to understand this. Because when you know that regardless of race, creed, color, origin, anything, 6,000 miles away, that your unit is so tight that the person on your left or right will do everything in their power to make sure you never become an MIA. That is this generation. They've been told that. So one, it fulfills that promise that people can see. But secondly is, in a rifle squad or in a tank crew, that makes fear subside when I know that Vic is going to do whatever he can do to make sure I'm not getting drugged through the streets of Mogadishu in front of my family on TV. And it matters to these families even today.
For sure. And I think, too, even if you want to disregard the spiritual aspect or even the moral responsibility that our country has to continue with this, but from just a pragmatist standpoint, if you're going to have an all-volunteer force, you have to maintain that promise that if you give the ultimate sacrifice to this country, we're going to do everything to make sure that you get home. And if you can't, and if we continue to renege on that promise, or if that promise is always unfulfilled, well, then you wonder why mothers and fathers aren't all that stoked to have their kids signing, and raising their right hand. So. But regardless, I think just from a human standpoint, what you're doing it's just absolutely amazing. As a pilot, was there ever a time where you flew over the Pacific or anything like that? No, the reason I'm thinking is just, we talk a lot in the strategic and operational world about the tyranny of distance. I wonder if because these areas are so remote, little dots in the Pacific, it's in the largest ocean in the world, that if that also kind of puts it into the sort of keeps it out of the public consciousness. And I wonder if you ever flew over that and had any of those experiences, like looking down and just seeing all blue, and then there's like, oh, there's a little dot, and then
I mean, it's amazing how large the Pacific Ocean is.
Yeah.
And in that context, you can see the incredible achievement that the Marine Corps and the U.S. Navy had in World War II. I mean, it's an amazing achievement. But being a pilot didn't have a lot to do with this, other than I made a lot of money and used a lot of that money to start this project and to fund it. I was telling Justin that as a childhood dream, I'd always wanted to restore an old World War II fighter plane, and I bought a F4U-1A Corsair project,
Nice.
and I wanted to restore it. And I ended up selling it, and I jokingly say that the right wing of that airplane paid for the recovery of Cemetery 27 on Tarawa, and that's a fact. So,
That's amazing.
So yeah, I understand the tyranny of distance, but at the same time, that didn't have a lot of factor into what we were doing. We saw the human value of all of those people that are still missing, and a lot of times people look at the missing like it's a science project, but it's not. It's a person. And for example, we built an office out on Tarawa and staffed it 365 days a year so that we could take maximum advantage of the intel collection to locate all these 80-year-old graves, and we were successful in that. And we had 12 U.S. Marines laid out on tables in our office, and I was cleaning and restoring one of the ID tags, and some of the younger scientists came into the operation, and they started geeking out about the injuries that these people had suffered. And it was awful to hear them talking like that. And they were like, dude, look at the perimortem injuries. And one of them said literally, dude, this dude got so fucked up. And I just looked up off the table and I said, hey, shut the fuck up and get out of my lab. I said, you're working on people that are better than you are, and you have no right to talk like that in here. And they left. And so the next morning, they tried to pick an argument with me over the breakfast table, and they were like, we didn't really like the way you were talking to us. And I said, look, if you don't like working on this incredible archaeology project, I said, call my gay, Trump-loving travel agent and get yourself a ticket home. And they did. A bunch of them left, and I was like, good. You guys just saved us a ton of trouble.
Wow.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's a little tough that must have been tough to witness.
I mean, I can't stand listening to people talk so disrespectfully like that, and so I told them.
I just can't believe that someone would show up with that kind of attitude. I mean,
believe it.
Yeah,
that's the new attitude in America, and so yeah.
So what was that like then? Speaking of the scientists and things, so for those who maybe missed some of our earlier conversations about History Flight, you guys, I mean, like you said, it's a rigorous scientific exploration that you guys are doing to find these remains and to find these Americans and bring them home. How did all that start? So you're a pilot, you now have the funding. Now you need to find archaeologists, you need to find...
Okay,
so how does that work?
That's an excellent question, and I'll tell you exactly what we did. Since I had a lot of practical business experience in the 90s, and I knew how to make things successful, and I had decades and decades of flying experience where you risk manage to make decisions where you know that the outcome is going to be 100% positive. I combined those two types of decision makings and went out and found decent people that could do uniform kind of work, where they could work together, where they're producing the same type of work product. And so I was very lucky to have a number of really talented scientific people volunteer for the project at the beginning, like Dr. Chet Walker and Dr. Gus Pantel and many others. And one of the things I said to Dr. Pantel, we made him he's a IKMO expert anthropologist, archaeologist, and we made him in charge of our archaeology program. And I said to him, Gus, where is the standards for archaeology?
Standards.
And I said, I want to have it as standardized as we have in our cockpit when we're flying transport category airplanes. I'm going to sit in the cockpit with 5 different people this week, and we're all going to do the same thing. And the outcome is going to be 100% positive. And so when I asked him where's the standards, he started laughing. And he goes, there are no standards. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, it's always like, Dr. So-and-so at University of Chicago does it this way, and Dr. So-and-so at UCLA does it this way. And I said, no. We're going to have to build what we want to get the same uniform, high-quality work product. And he did. And so
That's cool.
I tasked him with that, and we built up a really strong archaeology program with a bunch of really good people. But I jokingly say that, and I said to Dr. Chet Walker, for example, I said, Chet, why is it that 90% of the people in your profession are idiots? And he goes, don't be so charitable. He goes, it's like 95%. So what was funny is we had a steep learning curve. We would hire people that looked really great on paper, but it took sending them out into the field with experienced people to see if they had the same kind of work ethic that you did, to see if they had the same kind of interest in high quality work. And it was difficult to get to where we wanted to be, because we had to, like along the way we had one guy, he just refused to dig on this one site. He goes, well, I'm not going to do that. And we said, well, why not? And he was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And so it's, well, you can go home then. And he took the keys to the company rental car and threw them across the fence of the hotel into this barrio in Tarawa. And then, amid a plethora of swear words, walked out. And when he finally went to the airport and left, he left behind a suitcase full of pharmaceutical drugs.
No.
And so there's that.
And Vic, and where that ties kind of when you mentioned with the tyranny of distance, okay, it's very easy in the world, and a lot of people want to jump on really, quote, cool projects, but not that this is not cool. But there are people who want to go to Paris to do Paris things. They want to go to the Solomon Islands. They want to go to Palau or Micronesia to do certain things here. You're talking about it takes a very special person to go to a fourth world, and that's questionable nation, in the middle of nowhere with that distance, because there is a huge amount of trust that they're not just here. They're not just down the street. So the vetting process happens, like you said, on paper, this looks like the right person. Now we're going to put you on a plane and send you 6,000 miles in the middle of nowhere to now do the work that you're saying that is on here with some credible people that are there. And then you actually find out, when you have a business like that and everybody is not operating in the same region, it's like, corporations where their headquarters is here, but the work is over here. You find people start to take advantage of situations. You find people, it'll take them 3 days to get to me out here if I'm not doing something, or I just won't pick up. Their communications are crappy. We're just going to say we can't get any communications, right? There's so many ways to sift through that workforce to start to go like, okay, you're out, you stay, you're out, to get to that product that Mark was talking about, where it does fall in to the expected standards. And then the best thing is, once you find that core nucleus team, you do everything you can to keep that core nucleus.
Yeah, and then use those high quality people to train less experienced people. And it's you don't really see somebody's work until they're working. And so, but at the same time, we were able to turn together a really crack team. I told our people, I'd rather you take more time and deliver a better product than to rush through things.
Yeah.
And a lot of the excavation pictures you'll see of their work, it looks like National Geographic, and that's what you want.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I definitely was thrilled to be able to talk to some of those really quality members of your team in 2020 when I wrote about History Flight.
And your article is
so
one of
impressed
the best articles that's ever been written about History Flight, by the way.
Oh,
It is.
But that's true.
That's
Thank you.
why you
Hands
brought
down.
it.
I didn't.
Just for that one moment. Is
I
why
didn't.
brought
Well,
it.
no, but I think it really is. It really is.
Kumbaya.
It is a great article, and
Thank you.
in doing so, it really showed all the different things that we're doing. It showed the two veterans one who survived the war,
Wendell.
one who was missing, and we recovered his missing friend. That
Yeah.
was incredible.
It is incredible.
It was an so I started following you and what you were doing 2014 maybe 2015, I don't remember.
Okay.
It was because I was writing the obituaries for Leatherneck, and so I'd get these DPAA press releases, and at the time my older son was about the age, well, both of my boys were kind of in the age range of these sets of remains, these Marines who were coming home at long last. And every one of them I would read, I wouldn't just, I don't know, there was just something about it. It affected me very deeply. And I would read them and think about their mothers. I just couldn't not think about their mothers. And then I heard about you in History Flight through the aviation world. I don't even remember how, and I determined, okay, I've got to find this Mark Noah person, and I've got to talk to him because I need to write about History Flight. And I kept striking out. I couldn't find you, locate you, and then one day you walked in the office, Sergeant Major
Absolutely.
LeHue, and I was told, because everybody on the Leatherneck staff knew I was trying to write about History Flight, that I was just really compelled by the work you were doing. So, and the thing about that article is that it was written in 2020 when we were all sitting at home doing a
Yes.
whole lot of
Right.
nothing.
Right.
And so I had the time on my hands to interview, I don't know, I think I interviewed 6 members of your team.
Yeah.
And then to interview Wendell, who he was, that was one of the last interviews he gave
It was.
before he died. Anyway, I love the work that you're doing, and it's kind of a bucket list item for me to actually be able to sit here and talk to you, because
that's
I've
great.
been
Well, thank you.
admiring it from afar.
We appreciate it. We're nothing. My mom always said, "Don't think you're anything special," and I would agree with that. But what we're doing is special, and
I think it is.
It has to be. It's work that has to be done.
And every member of your team that I spoke to, they all had that same attitude you have. Like, I'm not special, but what we're doing is incredible, and I feel so honored to be a part of it.
Right. That's how I feel.
And I was, it was hard. I would get so excited after finishing up an interview with each one of these people, and it sounds, a little weird to get excited about somebody talking about something, which is really at its heart, it's sad. But anyway, they all had that same attitude you have, and it was very inspiring to me. And I was lucky enough, which again, that's a weird word to use, to attend 2 of the funerals at Arlington. And the first one, I thought, I'm a tough journalist type person. I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna be detached from this group and just observe. And I mean, I was just sobbing. And I think Jordan was at that funeral, and I looked over at her through. I had my camera, and I was trying to discreetly and respectfully take photographs. And I saw that she got emotional. And, before long, I was just, I was very emotional. It was a very moving experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I guess going back to the scientist thing, how did you even come into contact with some of these folks? Were you just going to like universities?
We found that the best people got in touch with us.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's
interesting.
And then with the because they wanted to be part of what we were doing, and then we would ask them for
Referrals
recommendations.
from them.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was the best way to find the best people.
And how did they find out about you?
I think, like Nancy did, they'd heard of
Okay.
of some of the recovery work that
Yeah.
had happened already.
Wow. So it's all just sort of like the momentum just sort of is the snowball's just picking up everything on its way. That's
Yeah.
great. That's really amazing. Well, I guess last time we talked history flight, there's some geopolitical issues. You'd mentioned setting up, headquarters in Tarawa. You guys, has any of that died down? Where are you guys sitting right now as far as these, these smaller governments that are?
Well, I think the best way to cage it is to look at it in a macro picture and then discuss it in the micro detail. But essentially, the coronavirus pandemic was obviously not a mistake. And when the coronavirus pandemic was launched on the world, Western nations like Australia and New Zealand that have a strong presence in the Central Pacific moved out, and the Chinese Communist Party moved in. And they did that in numerous Pacific Island regions under the same footprint that the Japanese did before World War II started. And they made big steps in buying off the local government. And then when the pandemic was over, we got back in and we're doing our work. And then our work visas were basically not renewed because of political interference. So we've had some very substantial success dealing directly with the Kiribati government through the United Nations, and they're writing up a new memorandum of understanding for us
good.
now.
Yep.
So that's good. That's very, very positive. And like I said earlier, we try to keep everything positive. So there's that, and then Justin recently set up a meeting with the Deputy Chief of Mission and the Defense Attaché of the Japanese Embassy to discuss collaborative work that we might be able to do in regaining our access to our work visas and stuff like that. Because we've recovered 165 Japanese and Koreans on the island as well, several of which have been identified.
And that also opens up, Vic, the Pacific. That's not just, these operations are broader than just Tarawa.
All right, that's what I was
a
gonna
lot
ask
of things
about,
we're just talking about Tarawa here, but this is Germany, France, Belgium.
Yeah.
There's numerous operation sites and things that scientific recoveries and operations are. There's numerous research that's going on to build more strong cases to go and access in different areas, but specifically that only relates to the movement of the island of Tarawa, which to the U.S. government as well, that is a honey hole project for them. That is the greatest consolidated in the Pacific known area after History Flight has already been there and has recovered numerous rows and numerous cemeteries that is still known to be X amount are still there on that small little area. So you got a large concentration in a very small area. And the History Flight project over the years, when the government, the governmental agencies, namely the DPAA that's out there, that people will know, a lot of your listeners will have remembered the words JPAC or something like that. It's the newer version of JPAC. Like any other government agency, they have to show work to justify the budget money they are receiving.
Right.
And they have to meet metrics and thresholds, and the director has to testify in front of Congress each year before the new budget. Did you meet the threshold? Did you do this? Because if you don't, you're not getting as much money.
Right.
And as you heard Mark say earlier, there's not enough money already as it is. So they need every justification they can. Tarawa, at the time of the pandemic, was 20% of the total recoveries for the United States of America.
Jeez.
20% was feeding into the identifications that were being found in the labs that are now going towards the over aggregate number to help the DPAA meet the metric to go to this. So make no mistake, that is, and at that time, it was the only 365 24/7 independent operation in that network around the world. Not in Europe, not anywhere else. No one else was sitting on a site doing 365-day operations around the world to do that. And since the increase in partnerships start to happen after the pandemic, there's still not individuals that are like that. They're just conglomerations on target sites. So there's a need and a strong desire from the government angle, from the diplomatic angle, from the privatized industry, and even from the Japanese that came, that are now more receptive and open as well to their unilateral turnover of their soldiers. And they're also receptive as well to having open discussions about the historical things that maybe over the past 7 decades people didn't want to talk about, between Koreans, between Japanese, between other countries like that. And they're all starting to come together. And that meeting is now going, here's capabilities that you were unaware of. You now also have a country that is inspired, was the words. We are inspired by how much the Americans care about this and what they're doing, and we want to try to do things to replicate these efforts as well. And specifically when you're talking Tarawa, it's the same on Iwo Jima. It's the same at Guadalcanal. There's missing in action on every single major engagement. And we're not talking about 1 and 2. We're talking about the same concept of Tarawa applied in the Philippines and all through the slot, all the way up to mainland Japan. And you're talking about the prisoners of war that were moved on the hell ships to mainland Japan and placed into camps that the best intelligence in the world for our B-29 crews that are now moving to take the mainland Japan, you know what? They might have a general description in a 10-mile range that there may be American POWs somewhere in here. But the targeting in 1945 is not, do not drop a bomb on Building freaking X. Because that's where all the Americans are at. And you're talking about 600 plane waves going in. There are casualties of war. And those casualties of war are, unfortunately, a lot of American prisoners of war that had survived the Bataan death marches, that had survived for 3 years multiple camps, are now collapsing back towards Japan, and they become casualties of war. And that's in mainland Japan, where we didn't even invade because they were moving those casualties. So these conundrums exist in everybody's backyard throughout the Pacific. So as Mark was saying about the scope of 79,000 and some change that is here, that's American. This was a global concept.
Right. There's millions of Japanese that are still missing.
And you're talking New Zealanders and Australians, and you're talking everybody, Burmese, you're talking everybody in the regions, and they're all looking at, can what your science teams do can that methodology be applied in our case? Can our scientists go out and enjoy the same type of things that you can? And the answer to that is, with the right and appropriate training and everything, yes. And it can then become a greater humanitarian world concept where countries are working with each other on a humanitarian basis to do this. And that is what this project is. This project is not a militaristic campaign. It is a 100% humanitarian operation that just may so happen to have people who had military connections tied to it.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is that a little bit of a cultural shift to that attitude toward the war dead from the Japanese? Didn't they previously have a kind of different idea?
Yes, the Japanese Health and Human Services Ministry has changed their policy. Like in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they basically wouldn't address the issue. But now they're actively seeking to recover their war dead in a scientific fashion and identify them. And I think one or two of the Japanese that we recovered on Tarawa have been identified by name through DNA, as well as one of the Koreans.
Wow.
And that brings me to the question I have is, so I mean, obviously, the name of the organization is History Flight. You're uncovering history through a lot of archaeological sort of scientific means, but there's a historic aspect to this as well.
Sure.
Is there any, especially when it comes to the Japanese imperial, the history of the Japanese Empire, is there any sort of caution, or is there any reticence of the Japanese to fully uncover what that was? I mean, clearly the Korean remains that you're pulling out of there weren't like volunteers of the Japanese Imperial Navy, right? Or the Marines.
Well, in a broad context, it was a very excellent cultural exchange that we had yesterday with the staff of the Japanese embassy, and I mentioned to them that when I was in college, one of my history professors was a Marine veteran, and he taught a Pacific War history class. And in the class, we read a ton of different books and watched some of the classic movies. And he showed us this movie called The Burmese Harp, which is about members of the Japanese 26th Army that disappeared in the jungles of Burma, like an entire 3-division army group, basically died of starvation, and it's an excellent movie. And in it, I discussed this with the Japanese deputy chief of mission. I said, war is a tragedy. And that was the takeaway that I got from watching that movie. And war is a mistake. It's the final failure of diplomacy. And so, in doing so, to clean up the remnants of war like this is a just process that I think that they are very in favor of.
Good.
Yeah.
So it's not like, don't. Like, we don't
no,
want, that
no, it's not like those old jokes from the 70s where the Nazi guy says, like, don't talk about the war. It's not like that at all. I felt that they embraced it and they embraced the idea of doing recoveries in a collaborative way very positively. I was very impressed.
And we talked yesterday about the fact of you can't be responsible for what happened 80 years ago, but you can be responsible for what happps today.
Right.
So you can take the decisions for what happens today.
Can we isolate that quote and just apply it to a whole lot of different things?
Yeah.
And the other one is you have, regardless of national creed or origin, when you strip emotion, right, the facts of the matter are.
Right.
Just like a legal premise of, Your Honor, the facts of the matter is this. And you're presenting that. Of course, this is a very emotional subject.
Yeah.
Not even with just the Japanese, American families,
Sure.
MIA loss, and everything else. But you find out in previous years, a lot of that clouds the goodness that it's blocking you and putting binders on actually recovering or getting at the answers that people couldn't for the past 7 or 8 decades. Maybe a family was too emotional. Maybe there was a wrong approach made. Maybe personalities clash and they don't like that guy and they don't let. There's so many ways on why we don't look to ever blame first.
Right.
Ever. You look to not say in 1946 the American Graves Registration Unit just did such a terrible thing. I wasn't there in 1946. But I can tell you if I was in the AGRS and I was a Marine attached to that, and you're talking to me, and I know me, translated, I would have done the best personally I could have in 1946.
In 1946.
In 1946.
Right.
minus the funding I was getting, minus I only got a year on a global scale to find anything that we can. I'm not getting into the choice that General so-and-so was making.
Right.
Private First Class LeHue is in charge of this burial detail, and we know there are 19 or whatever. I'm going to do the best I can doing that to do this with the resources I have, the time constraints,
The technology that was available
and
to
the
you at the time.
technology. So I don't ever look to say they were just all screwed up and now here's this. That's not the case.
Right. And there's no axe to grind here.
Correct.
All these years later, what's important is pathways to success. How do you find the fallen? How do you recover them in the most efficient way possible? That's what's important.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, what's next for you guys? Like you talked, there's all these. Obviously, the world wasn't, fought only on Tarawa. So, what are more organizations reaching out? Or
Well, we're trying to. Like I said, we're working with the Kiribati government, and they're rewriting a new memorandum of understanding to get our work permits restored, and then we seek to continue the work. I mean, there's more than our lifetime worth of work here, and so we had an office in Europe, but we put it on mothballs basically from COVID, and essentially we'll probably try to restart some of those processes. We have other projects. We have a big graveyard project in the Philippines. We surveyed before COVID and found the original Cabanatuan POW cemetery.
no way.
And georeferenced and matched it onto mapping, so we know exactly where it is. We overflew that area with a UAV and created a aerial photo mosaic of it and georeferenced the original map on it. So we'd like to continue on and make those other projects as successful as Tarawa. For example, that POW cemetery in the Philippines, the population in the cemetery is about 4 times larger than the population on Tarawa.
Sure. Yeah, I can only imagine that with sort of the migration into the littorals and constant developing and things, that's got to be a real challenge. I mean, I would imagine kind of on a time crunch because these areas aren't going to be sanitized much longer as we continue to develop things, right? And then they're coming through with bulldozers and excavators. Right?
Yeah, I mean, nothing like modernity to destroy an archaeology site.
Right,
I mean,
right.
in Tarawa, we recovered 12 Marines underneath a building. We actually had to bring in an engineering company and brace the floor and the foundation of the building, and then dig down through the floor.
Jeez.
And so where can or how can people learn more? How can people help?
People can go to our website, historyflight.com, and they can read up about the stories. They can, if they seek to donate, if they think it's worthwhile, they can donate to it, or they can spread the words to their friends, because it's an amazing fact that many people are still missing, and yet so little is done by America today.
And so few know about it.
Right.
So few still know about it.
I think the reason that is that in the summer of 1944, America's casualties were about 100,000 a month.
Oh my gosh.
And they had and that's not just killed, but that's killed, wounded, and missing. And the missing the law said that if someone was deceased, they had to have the finding of death published in the local newspaper in their area. But the missing did not have a finding of death until a year after the event when they disappeared. Then they would have a presumptive finding of death. So that would never be published in the newspapers. And so it wasn't. And that's one of the ways that the missing ended up as a footnote on World War II's history.
Jeez.
It's not even in the history books. Like I pulled the American Heritage World War II history book, the classic that I read when I was in 6th and 7th grade. It's like 500 pages thick. There's not a mention of the missing in there at all.
God.
And then you amplify on a digital scale, even aside from World War II. Okay, the more modern days that we've came towards, thank God there has been less and less and less. Diplomatic concerns have made it very hard for Korean War families over the years to have closure in the Korean War.
That's right.
The soil consistencies and the mass rampant corruption and a lot of the things in the Vietnam government that continue to want to make America pay for things like that. What better way than to hold more MIAs? And we're not talking about the Chuck Norris or somebody in a bamboo cage MIAs,
Right.
but there is a bribery for access, pay to play. You come on in here, and then the likelihood, the nature of war changed. So the amount of MIAs, roughly 1,600 or so, you're talking not mass waves like on Normandy or Tarawa. You're talking about a two-man crew here. You're talking about a rifleman that disappeared in the jungle by themselves.
Right.
So the search context changes.
Or a plane that went down, the pilot was never found.
It is. And then the methodologies, land and sea. These are naval loss saddles, both shallow and deep water. These are air loss casualties. That are both, and then you're not even layering that against the training losses that were preparing for war at that time that are even located right in the United States, right off our own coast.
They lost 13,000 people in aircrew accidents training in America.
Right.
I didn't know that.
In uniform.
Jeez.
Right. Now, those don't fall into the same MIA category, right? So understanding the search parameters on why people concentrate on certain loci or certain wars or certain more than the geopolitical concept. In 2019, when we were working 6 sites in Europe in a 4.5, almost a 5-month period, which was unheard of. Usually it's a 30-day, you're on one site over here, and then you may come back a year from now, or you do that. We were operating against the race against time. What you had mentioned also is, these are forestry is happening. These are targets of opportunity disappearing. All of a sudden, you're talking about recovering 6 aircraft crash sites and macro sites in that equal amount of time period with multiple things happening at the same time. And I went, and Mark flew and got authorization with Gillies, the French government, and all of that, to fly a drone over the Battle of Belleau Wood.
Yeah.
Because there are still missing 5th Marines, U.S. Marines from World War I. And the harsh reality that a lot of people don't want to hear is this. As America's got this thing as of their memory span is, as the last veteran dies, it basically closes a lid on the generation. And then they move to the next generation.
Not for the families.
Not for the families. So it's very coincidental, one, to have the office in Fredericksburg that's in right downtown. In the bloodiest piece of ground in America, right? The most amount of casualties during the American Civil War happened in Spotsylvania County, Virginia. The bloodiest piece of ground single day is Antietam. But 4 major campaigns happened in Spotsylvania, Virginia. The largest amount of clash of troops in history was not Gettysburg. It was the Battle of Fredericksburg that had 50 more thousand troops clash than they did up at Gettysburg. Local history and these families run deep down there. So now that they know you exist and you've all visited the office and things like that, I've had numerous families that just don't understand, but they understand you're looking for missing in action. Well, my great-great-great-grandfather disappeared on Chancellorsville, What they want to know is, with today's technology, is it possible, whatever? Well, your great-great-great-grandfather is buried with 2,700 of his other lost companions underneath that big mound in the Confederate cemetery.
Right, as an unknown.
Right. Or on the federal cemetery, 3 times the amount that's in those graves that only have a number on them of the amount of people. Well, that is large scale in our own country. World War I is large scale on the war to end all wars on an epic nature because all of Europe is a graveyard, a generational graveyard. The more you dig down, you just go through the generations. Then you get to World War II. So one of the greatest things is the largest amount of systematic casualties that are considered recoverable and can be tested because there are generations that are still within the DNA scope. So you're not going down to fifth and sixth cousins where the markers won't be able to mark that. It has been assessed that roughly a little over 30,000 casualties of the 79,000 that Mark talked about, those are accessible in a certain way. The other ones are like the USS Arizona, other deep water lost sites that is a war grave.
Right.
Those still count, but we're not going down 20,000
Right.
feet to do
Right.
that. That's where they're at, and that's where they're known to be at. The race against time, against family members that are in that DNA chain right now that are no longer going to be there to be able to increase the possibilities. And then you also have the thing that started that. The veterans of World War II are not going to be here much longer. And so the same concept is eventually going to be applied in the memory
They're gonna
banks
put
of
a lid.
everybody.
Put a lid on that.
People are
generation.
going to be saying World War II had its time. Now we need to go somewhere else. And as an industry standard or anything else, it's not, that's sad to think like that. That we kind of look at different things. If there's an MIA for this country, like a missing in action soldier that put in time and he is not there, I don't care if it's at the Battle of Brooklyn. I don't care if it's at anything here, writing the own thing. That affected that family.
Right.
Okay? But the search parameters to go after those individuals are drastically different than the modern day search parameters for the other ones.
Sure.
But podcasts like this greatly help people understand that more and more.
Yeah, it would be amazing to do an archaeology project to recover the Maryland Regiment Revolutionary War soldiers from the Battle of Brooklyn, because they're buried in Brooklyn Heights,
Yeah.
purportedly underneath a gas station.
No way.
Yeah, there used
They
to be a
actually have
plaque on the
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that would be just an
That
incredible
would be.
archaeology project.
That would be.
Let's start raising money.
Hey,
That's the hardest
Scuttlebutt
thing.
listeners, open up the
MC
wallets.
That's the
MCA
hardest thing about this
subscribers.
project is raising funds.
Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
That's I mean, like I said, the right wing of my Corsair project paid for the Cemetery 27 recovery.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Well, Mark, this has been so great. Thank you for
Thank you
coming
both
up to
so
sit and
much.
have this conversation.
A pleasure.
This is really
And-
great. And Sergeant Major, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, guys.
Real quick plug. We've got groundbreaking going on.
Sure do.
right.
We sure do.
Yeah, yes, and all that good
it's
stuff.
coming into October.
That's right.
We're rolling up.
We need to do an update on that, an update episode
we do
soon.
need to
We do, and we should bring a couple of people, individuals, to
Yep.
come
Yeah.
back because we got a golf tournament that's going to be tied into that. We have
Yeah.
a groundbreaking after going on about 7 successful years of raising pennies, dimes, nickels, everything else
Yeah.
that you can, getting to honor the alligator Marines that have been long lost out of the deal.
Yeah.
It is, Vic.
It's
It's looking pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, so look exciting. So yeah, we'll get you back on. I don't know. We'll get Colonel Atkinson maybe. Come
Yep,
down.
maybe Mark Chabot that's up
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Sergeant Major Mark Chabot would
What
be
about,
great too.
Bill O'Brien, is he around?
I'm pretty sure that when you send the alligator bat signal into the air,
That's right. Yeah.
we'll be able to bring enough people. Yes, with a gator in the signal.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay,
Oh my
awesome.
gosh.
We'll get you back on. But Mark, thank you so much.
thank
This
you.
is awesome.
Appreciate it.
During the month of December, your gift to the Marine Corps Association Foundation goes 3 times as far, thanks to a special triple match from a group of loyal supporters. That's pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing. It's a great way to make your gift go a little further.
Yeah, and here we are on the on the crux of the holiday season, and obviously, a lot of what we do, we're in receive mode.
Yes.
But here we get a chance to give back. And the thing about giving, usually for me, is I'm happy with the single match.
Yeah.
Because I usually just give and then it's like, hey, take it, have fun with it,
Right.
and go cure your thing. But when I find out, hey, you're going to match what I just gave, that's awesome. And then, like, if you go to the store or whatever and you get a double, like a 2-for-1, you buy 2, get a third free. Amazing.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. And also, I mean, what a great way, like I said earlier, what a great way to make your money go a little farther? What
3 times as far,
three
actually.
times. Not just twice, 3 times
Yeah,
as
this
far.
unbelievable. The fact that we have donors that are willing to do this really is a testament to the association and its members.
It is.
And so just to clarify, though, so every dollar you give, not that we haven't already hopefully articulated this, but every dollar you give will be tripled to provide Marines with leadership forums, unit libraries, and other professional development tools that strengthen them for service today and success tomorrow. So it's almost like you get a triple match, and then this is not just going to benefit today, but it benefits tomorrow as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a double inside of the triple.
There's a lot of
It's
math
so
in
much
here.
going on.
There's
Well-
math, there's baseball happening, there's
I
donations.
mean, we're playing 5D chess right now
That's
with your
right.
donation.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Actually,
so.
we're not going to be playing with it.
No.
That just
no playing
again,
with the donation.
just to be clear, Vic Rubel doesn't see nothing that you do is in my wheelhouse, and that's a good thing because it's going to get tripled, and it's going to go towards these really great things like unit libraries. Professional development tools, et cetera, et cetera. So
And maybe some classes for us to learn how to record PSAs.
that would actually, that would be a probably a 0.5 match.
0.5 match.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, seriously though, don't miss this chance to make triple the impact by texting year end 2025 to 91999 by December 31st and support the future of our Corps. That's text year end 2025 to 91999.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Litchman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.